Happy 2026. Let's talk about the 10 best books that I read in 2025. Hi, my name is Jonathan, and this is Mr. Pearson Talks Books. I'm an elementary school teacher who likes to read. I read primarily middle grade books so I can make recommendations, but from time to time, I read other stuff as well. And today, I want to tell you about the 10 best books that I read in 2025. Keep in mind, this is a very subjective list, meaning things that I enjoyed, you may not necessarily like, and things that you like, uh, I may not necessarily enjoy. So these are the 10 books that I enjoyed the most, and they are in no particular order. I sat down and tried to rank them and just wasn't able to say this was number 10, this was number one. So I'm just going to tell you the 10 books that I enjoyed the most. First up was a book I read called The Night Gardener. I had seen it in the library many times, and the cover really intrigued me. So I grabbed it. It's The Night Gardener by Jonathan Auxier, and it's about two kids who live in Ireland who are orphans. And through a series of events, they are able to get hired on with a family who have a manor house. And in this manor house, there seems to be a type of curse because nobody really likes each other. And come to find out, there is a room that will give you whatever you want. But it comes at a very high cost. And so the family is caught up in it pretty soon. The young girl and the boy are caught up in it as well. And they have to figure out how to overcome this curse and not end up becoming the next victim of the Night Gardener. So that book is called The Night Gardener by Jonathan Auxier. Great book, very atmospheric. You can really feel the creepiness and the environment of the house and the tree and everything that's going on. There's lots of mist and darkness and things. It's a very fun book to read. Next, I read a book called The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This is a book that won the Newbery Award a few years ago. And to try to tell you everything that happens in this book would take way too long. A real quick recap. There is a village who every year they take a baby into the woods because they believe that if they sacrifice this baby to a witch, then she won't come and cause problems in the town. The witch, however, can't figure out why this town keeps leaving babies in the woods. And so she goes every year to rescue the baby and take it to another village where they're raised, and they're known as the Moon Children. Well, this particular year, she goes to rescue the baby, and she inadvertently gives the baby moonlight to drink, which causes a whole series of problems because now the baby has magic. And so the witch and her companions have to figure out, how do we handle this little girl who has all of this magic and has no idea how to use it? There are other storylines interweaved, like there's a young man who doesn't want to sacrifice the babies anymore. And then there is the baby's real mother who, for obvious reasons, has a mental breakdown because her child is taken from her. And she comes up with a plan to figure it out. And all of these events tie back together in a really beautiful, wonderful way. It's a beautiful book. It's a funny book. It's a sad book at times. And that is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. Then, third on my list, and again, not in any particular order, just happened to be writing them down, and that was Give Me Something Good to Eat by D.W. Gillespie. And this particular book is set in the town of Pearl, North Carolina. And Pearl, North Carolina is obsessed with Halloween. Every year they go over the top. They have pumpkins and they have all kinds of decorations and contests and costumes. It's crazy. And all of that is done to hide a very dark secret about the town. And that's that every Halloween, a child goes missing. And to make it even sadder and more dark, is the fact that nobody remembers that child, not even the child's own parents. The only exception is there's one young man who remembers the night his friend was taken. And he never forgot that friend. And this year, it's his sister who is the one who's taken. And so he and three of his friends, they follow the monster that has kidnapped his sister, and they follow him into something that's known as the Underpearl, which is an upside down version of their town, except instead of people, it's run by monsters. And there's some pretty creepy stuff that happens in here, like where the candy comes from. And there are some scenes in this book that I did not know how the characters are going to make it out of it. One particular scene that stands out was it involved the real Pearl and a werewolf, and some of the characters watching a situation go down through a mirror, watching the scenes play out and not being able to do anything about it. Really scary book. It was a lot of fun to read, and that was Give Me Something Good to Eat by D.W. Gillespie. Then, also related to Halloween, is a book called The Bellwoods Game by Celia Krampien. And this particular book is about some elementary school kids who every year on Halloween they play a game where some of them are selected to go into the woods and ring a bell. And when by doing so, it keeps the ghost of a girl from coming and wreaking havoc on the town. And if you win, you get whatever you want. That said, if you get caught by the ghost, then you have to give her something or you disappear forever. And so the main character of the book, her and her friends, well, she's chosen, and some of her friends follow along because they want, one of them's a journalist or wants to be a journalist, and so he wants to write about the event. And it gets really creepy from there. This book reminded me a lot of Stephen King's It. Now, I haven't read the book, but I have seen the movie, the Tim Curry miniseries, and how it plays off of childhood fears. And a lot of that ties into this book. And so it made for a really fun but really scary read. And that was The Bellwoods Game by Celia Krampien. Number 5 is, this is the first book in a trilogy. All of the books in the trilogy are amazing. But I'm going to focus on just the first one. And that's Framed by James Ponti. And it's about this boy, and he is very observant. He picks up on little details that other people miss, and he's able to put the pieces together. He uses something called TOAST, the theory of all small things, to help him figure things out. And so he gets hired or recruited by the FBI to help them with cases in certain situations, he and his friend. And this one happens to be about some artwork that goes missing. And so he helps with the crime and solving the mystery of the missing artwork. There's 2 other books in the series. One's called Vanished, and the other is called Trapped. All of them are great books. In fact, anything by James Ponti, you should read it immediately, because all of his books, whether it's this series, the Toast Mysteries, whether it's the City Spies or the Sherlock Society, all of those books are great. They have a lot of humor, a lot of heart. They're just wonderful books to read. This one on my list was Framed by James Ponti. Now, before I give you the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the last 5, I want to give you 2 honorable mentions. These are not middle grade books. These are adult novels that I read. The first one is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And I have a video on my channel if you'd like to go check that out. I'll leave a link to that. But this is the story of an unnamed narrator. We don't know what her name is. She's never named. Who marries a man named Maxim, a very wealthy guy whose first wife died under mysterious circumstances. And so they get married, and she moves into Manderley, which is the house, the manor, mansion, whatever you want to call it, estate that her husband owns. And she now has to deal with the specter of Rebecca, who was his first wife. Now, I went into this thinking it was a ghost story, that Rebecca was a ghost, but it's more a psychological thriller and all of the play out that comes from that. And then what happens when sins of the past come back. And the twist in this book is wild. This was a book that was written probably 100 years ago. Was made into a movie by Alfred Hitchcock that won the Oscar for Best Picture. Great book. I highly recommend you read it. If you want to see my reaction to it, you can watch my video that I have on here. And while you're watching that video, go ahead and hit subscribe so that when new videos come out on the channel, you can get notifications of those. The second honorable mention is a book called The Proving Ground by Michael Connelly. Michael Connelly writes detective stories, and he also writes about a lawyer named Mickey Haller. If you've heard of The Lincoln Lawyer, this book is in the Lincoln Lawyer series. And in this case, Mickey Haller is I can't think, representing, there we go, the mother of a girl who was involved in a crime that may stem back to an artificial intelligent companion. And Mickey and his team are trying to prove that the coding that went into this AI companion was not neutral, that the biases of the coder went into it, which led to this horrific crime taking place. It was a great read. Normally there's, cops and bad guys and things like that in his books. There wasn't any of that in this particular book. It was just a lot of legal stuff, and I really enjoyed it. So that's The Proving Ground by Michael Connelly. Michael Connelly is one of those writers where if he writes it, I'm going to get it. I'm going to read it as quickly as I can. Well, let's continue on with the last 5 on my list here. The next one is Westfallen by Anne and Ben Brashares. This is the first book in a 2-book series so far. I believe there's another one coming out because the second one ended on a cliffhanger. So I'm going to make a little loophole. I'm going to talk about both books. The first book is there's a group of kids in the 1940s, and there's a group of kids in the 2020s, I think it is, who are able to communicate via a radio. Don't ask me how to explain it. I don't know how it works. But then the kids in the future can also communicate with the kids in the past by a underground stream. They open up the trapdoor in the shed that they're in, and they can drop things in the river, and it flows back in time. Well, through their communication, they inadvertently end up changing history. And so in the future, the United States no longer exists, and our main characters wake up one day living in Westfallen, which is the United States if the Axis powers had won World War II. And so now they have to figure out what it was that they changed, what caused history to go awry, and get the kids in the past to fix it. And then the second one is called Westfallen Into the Fire. Again, using a loophole, including both these books on my list. And this is more of, they thought they changed history, but it didn't work. And so now they have to live in the day-to-day while still trying to figure out, well, if this thing that we didn't fix time, what else could we have done to try to fix it? Both of them are absolutely wonderful books. Just a really interesting, gives you a lot to think about type of book. A book that I read, and this was one of the first books I read this year, and that was The First State of Being by Erin and Entrada Kelly. And this actually won the 2025 Newbery Award for Children's Literature. And this is a time travel story that takes place in 1999 with the specter of Y2K about to happen. And I lived through that. I remember all of the anxiety and of things that people were scared that the world was going to end when the computers flipped over from 99 to 00, whether the coding could handle it. And then there is a young man in the future who time travels back here and meets the main character and his friend and they're trying to figure out how to get him back to the future. And it reminded me a great deal of my favorite book of all time, which is When You Reach Me by Rebecca Stead. In fact, my understanding is Ms. Kelly actually wrote that as an homage to When You Reach Me, just like When You Reach Me was written about A Wrinkle in Time. Beautiful book, lots of good stuff. If Erin Entrada Kelly writes a book, you should probably read it. This was The First State of Being by Erin Entrada Kelly. Then another book that's the first in a trilogy, and that's Spirit Hunters by Ellen O. It's about a girl who moved from New York to Washington, D.C. Her family buys a big house that people think is haunted. And as soon as they move in, strange things start to happen, including her little brother having a imaginary friend who doesn't want anybody to know about him. It is a terrifying book. It was probably the scariest book I've read in a very long time. In fact, the review I have for it on my channel said that it was the scariest middle grade book I've read, and that is true. There are some that come close, but not quite this like this one. And as she continues on trying to figure out the mystery of the haunted house, there are things from her past that she can't remember what happened. And so they start to bubble up to the surface, and you get to know the truth of why she was in the hospital. Very scary, very scary. And that is Spirit Hunters by Ellen O. There are 2 more in the series. Definitely recommend those also. The next one is The Mystery of Black Hollow Lane by Julia Noble. And if you like dark academia, or if you like stories that are set in a boarding school and secret societies and mysteries, I recommend The Mystery of Black Hollow Lane. There is a sequel to it as well. You're going to hear me say that a lot. And in this particular book, a girl is sent to a boarding school in England, and come to find out that her father, who disappeared from her life when she was 3, was a student there, but nobody wants to talk about him or anything like that. And then some strange things start to happen as people are finding out who her father was. It is a really intricate mystery. It was a lot of fun to read, and I highly recommend you grab it, but make sure you got plenty of time, because once you start to read it, you're not going to want to put it down. The Mystery of Black Hollow Lane by Julia Noble. And then finally on my list, this one is actually a sequel, because I read the first one in 2024. But the sequel is called Impossible Creatures, The Poisoned King by Catherine Rundell. And this is the story. There's 2 stories that interweave together. There's a boy, and his job is to protect what's known as the archipelago, which is the home to mysterious and mythical creatures. And he gets word that all of the dragons are dying, and he has to go figure out what is causing the dragons to die. And the other story is there is a princess who, her grandfather is murdered, and her father is blamed for it, because all the evidence points to him as the culprit. And then she's allegedly being sent away to school, but it's actually an ambush to kill her and get her out of the way. And so now she has to figure out how she can return back to her home and bring the real culprit to justice, with the help of the boy who is trying to solve the mystery of why the dragons are dying. Love this book because it reminds me so much of things like The Never-Ending Story or The Chronicles of Narnia. Both of those are favorites of mine, and that's what this series reminds me of a great deal. And that is Impossible Creatures, The Poisoned King by Catherine Rundell. So there are my 10-ish, I say ish because I threw a few extras in there, so found some loopholes. Those are my favorite books that I read in 2025. I'm looking forward to 2026 to see what other books I might read, and whether they're going to be able to top any of these, because these were some really good stories. So down in the comments, I want to know, what was your favorite read of 2025? Or did you read any of the books that were on my list, and what were your thoughts on them? Leave that down in the comments. And like I mentioned earlier, if you would do me a favor, hit like and subscribe. Like the video so that other people will get to see it. YouTube sees how many people like the video, and then they send it out to others. And subscribe so that you're on the list when new videos like this come out. And as always, my name is Jonathan. This is Mr. Pearson Talks Books. We'll see you next time.